Her name was Neda. In Farsi, it means the voice. True to her name, she loved music, sought freedom, and she's dead. Shot down in the streets by an Iranian regime, state-sanctioned murderers. She must not have died in vain. Today, Iranians and Americans face a generational chance for freedom, one that ensures a rogue regime's implosion, prevents a nuclear confrontation. Regrettably, our president's post-American foreign policy presumes talk can thaw the murderous mullahs' hearts and attain a grand bargain for peace in our time. Consequently, while Iranians demanded their freedom from a barbarous regime, the president vapidly opined.
Powerful stuff from the smartest dude in politics. He uses words I don't even understand. We're pleased to bring back to the program Michigan Congressman McCotter. He's also the Republican House Policy Committee Chairman. Hey, Congressman, always a pleasure to have you grace our Red Eye universe. I know you're almost getting ready to vote, so I don't want to hold you too long. But, you know, the story of Neda is heart-wrenching. I actually can't even watch the footage of her last moments. But, I mean, what do you think? Do you think her death may be a rallying cry against this corrupt regime?
Well, Greg, it's clearly a rallying cry for Iranians, people who are yearning to exercise their God-given right to liberty the way we in the United States and around the free world enjoy. The problem is the American government does not understand that we have to be in full support of these demonstrators, that at this point in time they need us, they need to know we are there for them in the same way Natan Sharansky knew in a Siberian prison that when Ronald Reagan said the Soviet Union was an evil empire, it became what he called a beautiful moment. We should never be bashful in our support of liberty, and we should never allow what butchers like the mullahs in Iran do to dictate our commitment. Lady Liberty does not have a dimmer switch.
You know, Obama seems to be saying that Iran has always been a corrupt quagmire and that there's very little difference between Mossavi and Ahmadinejad, and there's really nothing much that we can do. I mean, he has some legitimate points in there. I mean, Mossavi is no saint. But what would you do in his case, in his situation?
There's no legitimate point for equivocating between the people in the streets that are demanding their freedom. He is again trying to play a puerile game of moral relativism between two competing interests. The reality is people like Neda wanted to be free. They saw what people had done throughout the world, throughout the course of history, and they thought it was time for Iran to take its rightful place amongst the family of free nations. What we continue to look for here in the United States is a call from the United States to do everything it can to bring world pressure to bear on the Iranian regime. At this point in time, Greg, the United States could fully enact the Iranian Sanctions Act. There are still goods we trade with that regime which should not be continued. We look at the refined fuel that has to be imported into Iran. As our leader, John Boehner, has pointed out, that should cease too. This administration should put back all full funding of democracy in Iran support that was cut out of the last budget. There are things that we should do to that regime and let them know they will be held criminally liable by the international community for any acts they take against demonstrators. These are the types of things we should be prepared to do. But to simply equivocate and hope for the best is not what is best about the United States.
Now the regime has already accused us of meddling before we've done anything. So my theory is if you're already accused of committing a crime, then commit the hell out of that crime. I mean, you can't do any. They've already said you're meddling, so why don't we meddle?
This is the inanity of appeasement, Greg. To base your actions upon what a murderous, lying regime might say about you. They are going to lie anyways. They are going to, for the sake of what they believe to be their survival, shoot people like Neda in the streets, innocent human beings who want nothing more than liberty. What Ronald Reagan understood was that you have to have the moral clarity and courage as the leader of America and the free world to stand behind those fully who are trying to seek their freedom. Think about this, Greg. Many of the same voices we hear today saying that the United States needs to be measured in its approach to the support of liberty are the very same types of voices that said Ronald Reagan was wrong when he called the Soviet Union an evil empire. Were the various types of people who said Ronald Reagan was wrong when he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And were the very types of people who said Ronald Reagan should not have been so foursquare in his support of Lech Walesa and solidarity. I don't know that Ronald Reagan's full and unequivocal support for solidarity hurt their cause.
You know, Congressman, I just wish you felt more strongly about this.
Greg, this is one of the reasons I'm a Republican. This is one of the reasons that I became involved in politics. But more importantly, this is one of the fundamental reasons I cherish being an American. We are the heirs of liberty. We extend it to others to preserve it for ourselves. This is no different than it's ever been in the past. Unfortunately, this administration's actions seem to be different than the ones we saw under Ronald Reagan.
Now, before I let you go, what's the vote tonight?
We're voting on a defense bill. The Democrats seem to think that with North Korea pointing missiles at Hawaii and the Iranians on the verge of going nuclear, we no longer need a missile defense. I tend to find that a bit wrong-headed.
Yes. To put it mildly. Yeah.
Well, that's just me.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your... Yeah? Hey, I want to ask you...
And this is with a speaker who lives in California, Greg. I mean, they're closer to North Korea than Michigan, and I'm more upset about it.
So, before